In the dense forests of Montana's Glacier Ridge Wildlife Reserve, a mysterious event began unfolding that would challenge everything we thought we knew about wild animals and their connection to humans. On a crisp November morning, when most bears should have been preparing for winter hibernation, Senior Park Ranger David Cooper witnessed something that would spark one of the most extraordinary wildlife stories ever documented. At first, it seemed like a routine morning at Pine Valley Ranger District. The unseasonably warm fall had kept many animals active longer than usual, but what David Cooper observed through his binoculars that morning made him question everything his 18 years of experience had taught him. A massive grizzly bear, later nicknamed Shadow, was approaching an isolated cabin with an intentionality that defied natural behavior. What happened over the next 7 days would not only captivate the world, but also revolutionize our understanding of animal intelligence and emotional capacity. David's hands trembled as he radioed his colleague Rachel Martinez. "Rachel, you need to see this." His voice wavered with a mix of disbelief and awe. "We've got a situation at Harrison's cabin. There's a bear. But it's not what you think." The bear's behavior was unlike anything documented in the reserve's 40-year history. Instead of foraging or showing typical wild animal behavior, this massive creature was deliberately approaching Frank Harrison's cabin, following the same path it had apparently taken the day before. As Rachel arrived at the observation point, she immediately understood David's amazement. The bear, weighing approximately 650 pounds, moved with purpose, showing no signs of aggression or typical wild animal wariness. More shocking was the discovery that this was day 2 of what would become a 7-day vigil that would touch hearts worldwide and challenge scientific understanding of animal behavior. Mark Sullivan, head of park operations, quickly assembled a team to monitor the situation. The bear's behavior was so unusual that he immediately contacted Dr. Emily Watson, the reserve's lead wildlife veterinarian. "In my 20 years of working with wildlife, I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Watson remarked as she studied the bear through high-powered optics. "This isn't random behavior. There's something more going on here." The bear, distinguished by a striking white patch on its chest, would arrive at precisely the same time each morning, settling into a specific spot near the cabin's front porch. It would remain there for exactly 4 hours before departing, only to return the next day at the same time. This precision alone caught the attention of Dr. Michael Brooks, a renowned animal behavior expert who was called to the scene. As news of the peculiar behavior spread, Frank Harrison, the cabin's owner, revealed something that would add another layer to the unfolding mystery. Harrison, a retired Forest Service worker who had owned the cabin for 3 decades, recognized the bear from previous encounters. "That white patch," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'd know it anywhere. 3 years ago, my late wife, Helen, used to watch this bear from our porch. She called it Shadow because of how it would linger in the tree line at dusk." The mention of Helen Harrison would prove to be the first piece of a puzzle that would unravel over the next several days. Dr. Laura Winters, an animal psychology expert who had studied human-wildlife interactions for 15 years, arrived on the 3rd day of Shadow's vigil. What she observed would challenge existing theories about animal memory and emotional capacity. Working with local tracking expert Jack Morrison, the team began piecing together Shadow's daily routine. The bear would emerge from the forest at exactly 7:15 a.m., following a precise path to the cabin. Morrison's tracking revealed something extraordinary. Shadow wasn't just walking randomly, but following the exact route Helen Harrison used to take on her daily morning walks before her passing the previous winter. By day 4, the story had captured international attention. News crews gathered at the reserve's perimeter, while social media exploded with theories about Shadow's behavior. But it was Dr. Karen Phillips, the research coordinator, who made the breakthrough discovery. Reviewing old wildlife cameras from the property, she found footage from 3 years prior showing Helen Harrison frequently observing Shadow from her porch, sometimes reading books aloud during her morning coffee. The scientific implications were staggering. What we're witnessing, Dr. Brooks explained to the gathering of researchers and media, is potentially the first documented case of a wild animal demonstrating long-term emotional memory associated with a specific human. The precision of Shadow's timing, the exact replication of Helen's walking path, and the bear's calm demeanor all suggest a level of cognitive processing we previously thought impossible in wild animals. As the team continued their observation, Maria Gonzalez, a wildlife rehabilitation specialist, noticed something that brought tears to many observers' eyes. Shadow would often look up at the empty rocking chair on the porch, Helen's favorite spot, and make a soft, almost mournful sound, unlike any documented bear vocalization. When Frank Harrison would sit in the chair, Shadow would show signs of increased attention, only to display what experts described as visible disappointment when recognizing it wasn't Helen. The bear's behavior sparked a revolution in wildlife research. Dr. Emily Watson began documenting every detail of Shadow's daily visits, noting patterns that suggested an understanding of human schedules and routines far beyond what was previously thought possible. The bear would adjust its position based on the sun's movement, just as Helen used to do with her chair, seeking shade at precisely the same times of day. Professor Robert Taylor, a bear research specialist flown in from the University of Montana, made another startling discovery. Using advanced thermal imaging, he detected that Shadow's heart rate would change dramatically when Frank Harrison would emerge onto the porch, showing physiological responses typically associated with emotional recognition in mammals. By the 6th day, the story had touched millions of hearts worldwide. Social media was flooded with messages of support and amazement. Wildlife organizations began reassessing their understanding of animal grieving and emotional attachment. The scientific community was forced to confront the possibility that the emotional lives of wild animals were far more complex than previously imagined. Frank Harrison, moved by Shadow's apparent connection to his late wife's memory, began spending more time on the porch. Under the careful observation of the research team, he started reading aloud from Helen's favorite books, just as she used to do. Shadow's response was remarkable. The bear would settle into the exact spot where it used to rest during Helen's reading sessions, maintaining the same peaceful demeanor that had characterized those earlier encounters. On the 7th day, something extraordinary happened. As Frank finished reading from one of Helen's books, Shadow did something that left even the most skeptical scientists speechless. The bear gently approached the porch steps, deposited a small pine cone, the type Helen used to collect during her walks, and quietly departed. This unprecedented behavior suggested not just memory, but a level of symbolic thinking previously undocumented in wild animals. Dr. Laura Winters, studying the footage of this interaction, noted that this type of behavior represented a paradigm shift in our understanding of wildlife cognition. What we're seeing here isn't just learned behavior or conditioning, she explained. This appears to be a deliberate act of memorial, showing an understanding of loss and remembrance that we've never before seen in wild animals. The impact of Shadow's story extended far beyond the scientific community. Wildlife protection agencies worldwide began incorporating emotional intelligence assessments into their conservation strategies. The Glacier Ridge Wildlife Reserve established the Helen Harrison Wildlife Observation Program, dedicated to studying and protecting animals that demonstrate unique cognitive abilities. Frank Harrison, with the support of the research team, made the decision to maintain Helen's morning routine at the cabin, While Shadow's daily visits eventually became less regular, the bear continued to make periodic appearances, especially during the times of year that held particular significance in its shared history with Helen. The story of Shadow and the Harrison cabin became more than just a viral sensation or scientific curiosity. It became a testament to the depth of connection possible between humans and wild animals, challenging our preconceptions about consciousness, emotion, and memory in the natural world. The bear who remembered showed us that the capacity for love, loss, and remembrance knows no species barriers. Today, researchers continue to monitor Shadow, documenting behaviors that suggest an ongoing connection to the memory of Helen Harrison. The bear's story has inspired a new generation of wildlife researchers to look beyond traditional scientific parameters and consider the emotional lives of wild animals in their natural habitats. If this story touched your heart, remember that there are countless untold tales of remarkable connections between humans and wildlife waiting to be discovered. Subscribe now to join us on more incredible journeys into the hidden emotional worlds of wild animals. Hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss our newest uploads. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, where we bring you extraordinary true stories that challenge everything we think we know about the natural world. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that love and connection transcend all boundaries. Leave a comment below, telling us what moved you most about Shadow's story. We treasure hearing your thoughts and reactions to these remarkable moments. Give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more incredible stories that reveal the hidden depths of animal intelligence and emotion. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey into the heart of wild animal behavior. Stay tuned for our next video, where we'll bring you another remarkable story that proves truth is more extraordinary than fiction. As word of Shadow's extraordinary behavior spread throughout the scientific community, a specialized research team from the University of Montana's Wildlife Behavior Institute arrived at Glacier Ridge. Led by the renowned Dr. Catherine Walsh, they brought state-of-the-art monitoring equipment that would reveal aspects of Shadow's behavior that no one had anticipated. Their arrival coincided with a series of discoveries that would reshape our understanding of animal cognition forever. Using advanced thermal imaging cameras and high-frequency sound detection equipment, Dr. Walsh's team made a startling discovery. Shadow wasn't just visiting the cabin randomly during these 7 days. The bear was engaging in a complex series of behaviors that mirrored Helen Harrison's daily routines with uncanny precision. The timing of these visits coincided exactly with the 1-year anniversary of Helen's passing, suggesting a level of temporal awareness previously thought impossible in wild animals. Steve Peterson, the emergency response lead who had been monitoring the situation, noticed something extraordinary in Shadow's approach patterns. The bear wasn't just following Helen's old walking path, it was stopping at specific points where Helen used to pause to observe birds or collect pine cones. At each stop, Shadow would perform what Dr. Walsh termed memorial behaviors, gentle touches to tree trunks or rocks that Helen had frequently interacted with during her nature walks. The research team's audio equipment captured something even more remarkable. During its vigil, Shadow would emit low-frequency vocalizations that matched the rhythm and pattern of Helen's voice when she used to read aloud on the porch. Dr. Michael Brooks, analyzing these sounds, found they contained specific harmonic patterns that suggested the bear was actually attempting to recreate the cadence of human speech. Maria Gonzalez, working with local wildlife photographer Thomas Reed, documented another fascinating aspect of Shadow's behavior. The bear had developed a routine of bringing small objects to the cabin, pine cones, specific types of leaves, and even particular arrangements of twigs, all items that Helen had shown interest in during her nature walks. Each item was placed with deliberate care in locations where Helen used to display her found natural treasures. As the team delved deeper into their investigation, they discovered old photographs in Frank Harrison's cabin that revealed something extraordinary. In pictures from 3 years ago, Helen could be seen sitting on her porch, reading from her favorite nature books, while a younger shadow lingered at the forest's edge. The progression of photos showed the gradual development of trust between the woman and the wild animal, documenting a relationship that defied conventional wildlife behavior patterns. Dr. Laura Winters, analyzing the photographic evidence alongside Shadow's current behavior, identified what she called emotional mirroring, instances where the bear's body language and positioning exactly matched Helen's documented poses from years earlier. This suggested not just memory, but a deep understanding of human body language and emotional states that challenged existing theories about animal cognition. The breakthrough came on a quiet afternoon when Frank Harrison, following the research team's careful guidance, decided to recreate one of Helen's familiar rituals. As he sat in Helen's rocking chair, reading from her worn copy of Thoreau's Walden, Shadow displayed behavior that left the scientific team speechless. The bear approached closer than ever before, sat in exactly the same spot where it used to rest during Helen's readings, and maintained eye contact with Frank in a way that Dr. Brooks described as purposeful communication. Using specialized EEG equipment modified for wildlife observation, Dr. Karen Phillips recorded Shadow's brain activity during these interactions. The patterns she observed were revolutionary. The bear's neural responses showed striking similarities to those observed in domestic animals, forming strong bonds with humans. This was unprecedented in wild animal studies and suggested capabilities for emotional attachment that scientists had never believed possible in wild bears. Local tracking expert Jack Morrison, working with thermal imaging data, made another significant discovery. Shadow's body temperature would fluctuate in patterns that matched emotional responses in humans, warming during moments of connection and cooling during periods of apparent grief or longing. This physiological evidence supported what observers had intuitively sensed. Shadow was experiencing genuine emotional states in response to memories of Helen. The research team's findings sparked intense debate in the scientific community. Traditional wildlife behavioral models couldn't explain Shadow's complex emotional responses and apparent understanding of human loss. Dr. Robert Taylor, presenting preliminary findings to a hastily assembled conference of wildlife experts, suggested that this case required a complete reevaluation of how we understand animal consciousness and emotional capacity. Frank Harrison, working closely with the research team, began sharing detailed accounts of Helen's interactions with Shadow over the years. He recalled how Helen would often speak to the bear about her life, her thoughts, and her connection to nature. What had seemed like simple one-sided conversations at the time now took on new significance as Shadow demonstrated an understanding of specific words and phrases Helen had frequently used. Dr. Emily Watson, conducting detailed analyses of Shadow's daily patterns, discovered that the bear's behavior changed subtly depending on which book Frank read from Helen's collection. When he read from her favorite nature poems, Shadow would display different responses than during readings of her beloved wilderness adventure stories. This suggested not just memory of sounds, but an actual comprehension of different emotional tones and contexts. The implications of these discoveries extended far beyond this single case. Wildlife organizations worldwide began reviewing their assumptions about animal intelligence and emotional capacity. The Glacier Ridge Wildlife Reserve established new protocols for observing and documenting complex behavioral patterns in wild animals. particularly those showing signs of emotional connection to humans or specific locations. As the research continued, Professor Catherine Walsh made perhaps the most startling discovery yet. Using advanced vocalization analysis software, she detected patterns in Shadow's sounds that suggested the bear was attempting to recreate specific words Helen had frequently used. While not actual speech, these vocalizations showed deliberate manipulation of sound in ways that had never been documented in wild animals before. The story attracted the attention of Dr. James Morrison, a leading expert in animal grief studies, who flew in from Oxford University to observe Shadow's behavior. His assessment added another layer to the growing body of evidence. "What we're seeing here," he explained to the assembled research team, "isn't just learned behavior or conditioning. This appears to be a genuine expression of grief and remembrance, showing cognitive and emotional capabilities that force us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about wild animal consciousness." Meanwhile, Frank Harrison's relationship with Shadow continued to evolve under the careful observation of the research team. The bear began responding to Frank's presence in ways that suggested it recognized him as a connection to Helen, showing behaviors that Dr. Winters described as comfort-seeking, similar to how domestic animals might seek out items carrying the scent of a deceased owner. The research team's presence at Glacier Ridge expanded as more experts arrived to document this unprecedented case. Dr. Sarah Chen, a specialist in comparative psychology, began mapping Shadow's behaviors against known patterns of grief in other species. Her findings suggested that the bear was displaying mourning behaviors previously documented only in highly social animals like elephants and dolphins. As the scientific community grappled with the implications of these discoveries, something even more remarkable began to unfold. Other bears in the area started showing unusual interest in Shadow's behavior, following at a distance during its daily visits to the cabin. Dr. Brooks theorized that they were learning from Shadow's example, suggesting the possibility of cultural transmission of complex emotional behaviors in wild bear populations. The impact of Shadow's story reached beyond the scientific community. Wildlife photographers and filmmakers captured images that touched hearts worldwide. The massive bear delicately handling Helen's treasured pine cones, sitting peacefully as Frank read from her books, and maintaining its daily vigil with a dedication that spoke of deep emotional bonds. These images challenged conventional views of wild animals as creatures driven purely by instinct and survival needs. Dr. Michael Brooks, reflecting on weeks of accumulated data, presented a groundbreaking theory about animal consciousness. Shadow's behavior, he argued, demonstrated not just memory and emotion, but a sophisticated understanding of human relationships and the concept of loss. This suggested levels of cognitive processing that would require a complete revision of existing models of animal intelligence. The research team's findings began to influence wildlife management practices across the globe. Parks and reserves started implementing new observation protocols, looking for similar signs of complex emotional behavior in other wild animals. The Helen Harrison Wildlife Observation Program expanded its scope, establishing a network of researchers dedicated to studying emotional intelligence in wild animals. Frank Harrison, moved by the growing understanding of Shadow's connection to Helen, worked with the research team to establish a permanent wildlife observation station at his cabin. This would ensure that Shadow's extraordinary behavior could continue to be studied and documented, contributing to our evolving understanding of animal consciousness and emotional capacity. As the days passed, Shadow's behavior continued to yield new insights. The bear began creating what Dr. Walsh termed memory markers, carefully arranged collections of natural objects that mirrored Helen's own decorative habits. These arrangements showed planning and aesthetic awareness that challenged traditional understanding of animal cognition. The research at Glacier Ridge took an unexpected turn when Dr. Emily Watson discovered another layer to Shadow's extraordinary behavior. Through careful analysis of weather station data, she realized the bear's 7-day vigil coincided precisely with a rare meteorological phenomenon, a period of atmospheric conditions identical to the week when Helen Harrison first began her morning reading rituals 3 years ago. This suggested an awareness of environmental patterns that went far beyond basic animal instinct. Dr. Michael Brooks immediately initiated a new series of observations, focusing on Shadow's responses to subtle changes in barometric pressure and wind patterns. The bear's behavior showed remarkable correlation with these atmospheric shifts, mirroring how Helen used to adjust her morning routine based on weather conditions. This level of environmental awareness, combined with memory and emotional attachment, painted a picture of cognitive sophistication that challenged existing paradigms of animal intelligence. Rachel Martinez, conducting detailed surveys of the surrounding forest, made another startling discovery: the paths Shadow used to approach the cabin weren't just following Helen's old walking routes, they were carefully maintained. The bear had been clearing fallen branches and creating subtle markers, using natural materials to preserve these memorial pathways. This deliberate manipulation of the environment for non-survival purposes was unprecedented in wildlife behavior studies. The breakthrough in understanding Shadow's behavior came from an unexpected source. Amy Chen, analyzing old weather records and Helen's personal diaries, found that the bear's daily visiting times aligned perfectly with the changing sunrise patterns throughout the year. This suggested Shadow wasn't just remembering a specific time, but was actually tracking seasonal changes to maintain synchronization with Helen's former schedule. Professor Robert Taylor, working with advanced audio equipment, detected something remarkable in Shadow's vocalizations. The bear was producing sound patterns that mimicked the cadence of Helen's favorite morning bird calls, sounds she used to imitate during her nature walks. This wasn't simple mimicry. Shadow was recreating specific acoustic patterns associated with cherished memories, showing a sophisticated understanding of sound and its emotional significance. Mark Sullivan's team, using satellite tracking data, discovered that Shadow's territory had shifted significantly over the past year. The bear had gradually moved its entire range to center around the cabin, abandoning more resource-rich areas in favor of maintaining proximity to this emotionally significant location. This choice, prioritizing emotional connection over optimal foraging grounds, challenged fundamental assumptions about wildlife behavior. Dr. Laura Winters began documenting what she termed anticipatory behaviors in Shadow's routine. The bear would prepare for its daily visits by grooming in nearby streams and selecting specific plants, the same types of wildflowers Helen used to collect. This preparation ritual suggested a level of self-awareness and social consciousness previously unrecognized in wild animals. Frank Harrison, working with wildlife photographer Thomas Reed, captured images that revealed another dimension of Shadow's behavior. The bear would often pause at specific points along its route, assuming postures that exactly matched Helen's documented habits. The way she would stop to observe certain trees or listen to particular bird calls. This mimicry suggested a deep understanding of human body language and its significance. The research team's findings sparked intense interest from Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in comparative cognitive studies. Her analysis revealed patterns in Shadow's behavior that suggested not just memory, but active problem-solving. The bear had developed alternative routes to the cabin for different weather conditions, showing an understanding of cause and effect that went beyond instinctual responses. Maria Gonzalez made a pivotal discovery while reviewing thermal imaging data. Shadow's body temperature would change in predictable patterns just before displaying certain behaviors, indicating that the bear was actively planning its actions rather than responding to immediate stimuli. This evidence of forethought and planning in a wild animal was revolutionary in the field of wildlife biology. Dr. Karen Phillips, collaborating with neurological specialists, began mapping Shadow's brain activity patterns during different types of interactions. The results showed distinct neural signatures when the bear encountered objects associated with Helen, suggesting a form of emotional memory processing similar to that observed in humans experiencing nostalgia or grief. The significance of these findings extended beyond scientific circles. Wildlife documentary filmmakers began capturing Shadow's daily rituals, showcasing behaviors that touched viewers worldwide. The bear's gentle handling of Helen's personal items, its careful maintenance of memorial spaces, and its apparent understanding of human grief resonated with audiences in unexpected ways. Jack Morrison's tracking expertise revealed another layer of complexity in Shadow's behavior. The bear had established what appeared to be intentional resting spots along its route to the cabin, each corresponding to locations where Helen used to pause during her nature walks. These weren't just convenient stopping points, they were carefully chosen places that held specific emotional significance. Dr. Catherine Walsh's team, using specialized scent analysis equipment, discovered that Shadow had developed a sophisticated understanding of human scent patterns. The bear could distinguish between items that carried Helen's lingering scent and similar objects without this connection, showing a level of olfactory discrimination that went beyond typical wildlife capabilities. Steve Peterson, coordinating with local wildlife authorities, began documenting changes in the broader bear population's behavior. Other bears in the area started showing increased interest in human structures, not in search of food, but displaying what appeared to be observational learning, watching Shadow's interactions from a distance and mimicking certain behaviors. The research team's findings began influencing wildlife management practices across North America. Parks and reserves started implementing new protocols for observing and documenting complex emotional behaviors in wild animals, recognizing that traditional models of wildlife behavior might be too simplistic. Professor James Morrison, analyzing years of wildlife interaction data, discovered that Shadow's case wasn't entirely unique. There were other documented instances of wild animals forming emotional bonds with humans, but these cases had been dismissed or overlooked because they didn't fit existing behavioral models. This revelation led to a re-examination of historical wildlife records. Dr. Emily Watson's continued observation revealed subtle variations in Shadow's behavior based on the time of year. The bear's activities seemed to correlate with significant dates in Helen's life, showing an understanding of annual cycles that went beyond typical seasonal awareness. This suggested a sophistication in temporal memory previously undocumented in wildlife. Frank Harrison, working with the research team, began noticing patterns in Shadow's responses to different books from Helen's collection. The bear showed distinct reactions to various genres, staying longer during nature poetry readings and displaying more active engagement during adventure stories. This suggested an understanding of narrative tone and emotional content that defied conventional explanations. The impact of Shadow's story reached international wildlife conservation efforts. Organizations began developing new guidelines for protecting areas where animals displayed unusual emotional or cognitive behaviors, recognizing that these locations might be crucial for understanding wildlife intelligence and emotional capacity. Dr. Michael Brooks, continuing his vocalization studies, identified what he termed emotional signatures in Shadow's sounds, specific patterns that corresponded to different types of memories or interactions. These weren't random noises, but appeared to be intentional attempts at emotional communication. Rachel Martinez's ongoing surveys revealed that Shadow had begun creating what appeared to be memorial sites throughout its territory. These carefully maintained clearings, each containing arrangements of natural objects similar to those Helen used to collect, suggested a level of symbolic thinking previously unrecognized in wild animals. The research team's findings began attracting attention from cognitive scientists studying animal consciousness. Shadow's behavior suggested levels of self-awareness and emotional processing that bridged the perceived gap between human and animal consciousness, challenging long-held assumptions about the nature of intelligence and emotion in the natural world. Amy Chen's analysis of Shadow's daily patterns revealed another surprising aspect of the bear's behavior. During its visits to the cabin, Shadow would often engage in what appeared to be teaching behaviors, demonstrating its routines to younger bears in the area. This suggested not just individual learning, but the potential for cultural transmission of complex emotional behaviors in wild populations. Mark Sullivan's team, using advanced tracking technology, discovered that Shadow had developed sophisticated navigation patterns that incorporated both physical landmarks and emotional markers. The bear wasn't just moving through space, but was creating a complex emotional map of its territory, with the cabin serving as its central reference point. The implications of these discoveries continued to ripple through the scientific community, challenging established theories about wildlife behavior and consciousness. Shadow's story wasn't just about one bear's remarkable connection to a human. It was revolutionizing our understanding of animal intelligence and emotional capacity, suggesting that the natural world held depths of consciousness we were only beginning to comprehend. Each new discovery added layers to our understanding of animal consciousness and emotional complexity. Shadow's behavior wasn't just challenging scientific paradigms. It was offering a window into the sophisticated emotional lives of wild animals, suggesting that the boundaries between human and animal consciousness might be far more fluid than previously imagined. The turning point in understanding Shadow's remarkable behavior came when Dr. Emily Watson uncovered a hidden pattern in the bear's morning rituals. Using specialized movement tracking software, she noticed that Shadow wasn't just visiting the cabin. The bear was recreating intricate patterns of movement that corresponded perfectly with Helen's documented morning meditation practices. This discovery opened up entirely new avenues of research into animal consciousness and memory. The Glacier Ridge Research Station buzzed with excitement as Dr. Catherine Walsh's team implemented a groundbreaking series of cognitive tests. They carefully placed various objects from Helen's nature collection at different locations around the cabin, each holding distinct emotional significance. Shadow's responses to these items demonstrated an understanding of personal belongings and emotional attachment that went far beyond simple object recognition. Local wildlife guide Thomas Reed, spending dawn hours documenting Shadow's approach to the cabin, witnessed an extraordinary sequence of behaviors. The bear would pause at precise intervals, performing what appeared to be deliberate gestures that mirrored Helen's morning stretching routine. These weren't random movements, but carefully choreographed actions that suggested a deep understanding of human physical patterns. Dr. Michael Brooks and his team made a breakthrough while analyzing Shadow's interaction with the cabin's environment. The bear had begun creating what they termed memory zones, carefully maintained areas where specific interactions with Helen had taken place. Each zone showed signs of regular maintenance, with Shadow removing debris and arranging natural objects in patterns that reflected Helen's decorative preferences. Frank Harrison, working closely with Dr. Laura Winters, discovered that Shadow's behavior changed subtly depending on which of Helen's personal items were visible on the porch. The bear showed particular interest in her gardening tools, often gently touching them in the same order Helen used to arrange them. This suggested not just memory, but an understanding of human organizational patterns and their significance. The research team's understanding deepened when Maria Gonzalez implemented a series of environmental enrichment studies. By carefully introducing elements from Helen's daily routines, her favorite wildflowers, specific types of pine cones she collected, even the scent of her preferred herbal tea, they observed Shadow's responses. The bear demonstrated what appeared to be nostalgic behavior, spending time with these items in ways that mimicked Helen's documented interactions. Dr. Karen Phillips made a groundbreaking discovery while reviewing thermal imaging data from Shadow's daily visits. The bear's body temperature would fluctuate in patterns that matched human emotional responses, showing warmer readings when encountering items associated with happy memories and cooler patterns during moments of apparent reflection or sadness. This physiological evidence supported theories about deep emotional processing in wild animals. Professor Robert Taylor's acoustic analysis revealed another layer of complexity in Shadow's behavior. The bear had developed a series of vocalizations that seemed to respond to specific environmental cues. The morning birdsong Helen loved, the rustle of wind through her favorite trees, the creak of her rocking chair. These weren't random responses, but appeared to be part of a sophisticated memorial routine. Steve Peterson's security team, monitoring the area with night vision equipment, discovered that Shadow would sometimes visit the cabin during moonlit nights, sitting quietly in spots where Helen used to stargaze. This nighttime behavior showed an understanding of astronomical patterns that Helen had often observed and recorded in her nature journals. Rachel Martinez's ongoing habitat study revealed that Shadow had begun influencing the behavior of other bears in the region. Young bears in particular showed increasing interest in human structures, not as sources of food, but as objects of careful observation. This suggested the possibility of cultural transmission of complex emotional behaviors within the wild bear population. Dr. James Morrison's comparative analysis of Shadow's behavior against other documented cases of animal grieving revealed unprecedented levels of sophistication. The bear wasn't just expressing loss, but appeared to be actively maintaining connections through complex ritualistic behaviors that showed remarkable similarities to human memorial practices. Amy Chen's detailed mapping of Shadow's territory revealed another fascinating aspect of the bear's behavior. The animal had created a network of trails that connected various locations significant to Helen's nature walks, maintaining these paths with remarkable dedication. This suggested an understanding of landscape memory that went beyond simple navigation. The breakthrough in understanding Shadow's cognitive capabilities came when Dr. Sarah Chen implemented a series of recognition tests using Helen's personal items. The bear showed clear ability to distinguish between objects that had belonged to Helen and similar items that hadn't, demonstrating levels of discrimination that challenged existing theories about animal memory and emotional attachment. Mark Sullivan's team made a surprising discovery while reviewing historical weather data. Shadow's visits to the cabin showed subtle timing adjustments that perfectly matched Helen's documented schedule changes for different seasons. This suggested an understanding of human timekeeping that went far beyond simple circadian rhythms. Jack Morrison, studying Shadow's interaction with the local environment, noticed that the bear had begun creating what he termed memory gardens, small areas where specific types of plants Helen had favored were encouraged to grow. This manipulation of the natural environment for apparent emotional purposes was unprecedented in wildlife studies. Dr. Emily Watson's continued observation revealed that Shadow had developed sophisticated responses to changes in the cabin's appearance. When Frank Harrison would rearrange furniture or add new items, the bear would show clear signs of recognition or confusion, suggesting a detailed mental map of how things should be according to Helen's preferences. The research team's findings began to influence wildlife psychology studies worldwide. Shadow's case provided compelling evidence that animals could form deep emotional attachments that persisted long after the loss of the bonded individual, challenging traditional views about the temporary nature of animal grief. Professor Catherine Walsh's analysis of Shadow's daily routines revealed patterns that suggested the bear was not just remembering Helen, but actively maintaining a connection through carefully planned behaviors. Each visit followed a precise sequence that incorporated elements of Helen's daily activities, showing remarkable attention to detail and ritual. The impact of these discoveries extended beyond academic circles when Frank Harrison began sharing recordings of Shadow's behaviors with wildlife rehabilitation centers. The footage helped develop new approaches to understanding and supporting animals showing signs of emotional distress or loss, leading to more compassionate wildlife management practices. Dr. Michael Brooks' ongoing study of Shadow's vocalizations identified what he termed memorial songs, specific sound patterns that the bear would produce while engaging in behaviors associated with Helen's memory. These weren't random noises, but appeared to be intentional expressions of emotional states. Maria Gonzalez's documentation of Shadow's interaction with seasonal changes revealed another layer of sophistication. The bear would adjust its memorial behaviors to match Helen's documented seasonal activities, showing an understanding of annual patterns that went beyond simple environmental adaptation. The research team's understanding of Shadow's cognitive capabilities deepened when Dr. Laura Winters implemented a series of sensory recognition tests. Using items that carried Helen's scent, they observed the bear's ability to distinguish between different emotional associations, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of human emotional states. The implications of these findings continued to ripple through the scientific community, challenging established theories about wildlife behavior and consciousness. Shadow's case wasn't just documenting animal grief, it was providing evidence of sophisticated emotional processing and memory retention that suggested much higher levels of consciousness than previously recognized in wild animals. Frank Harrison's dedication to maintaining Helen's daily routines provided new insights into Shadow's behavior. The bear showed clear recognition of specific activities, responding differently to various books Helen had loved, suggesting an understanding of human ritual and routine that went beyond simple pattern recognition. Dr. Karen Phillips's neurological studies revealed patterns in Shadow's brain activity that closely resembled those observed in humans experiencing emotional memories. This physiological evidence supported theories about deep emotional processing in wild animals and suggested new approaches to understanding animal consciousness. The research team's findings began influencing wildlife protection policies as evidence mounted for the importance of preserving locations with significant emotional associations for wild animals. Shadow's case demonstrated that these connections could play crucial roles in animal well-being and behavioral development. The ongoing documentation of Shadow's behavior revealed increasingly sophisticated patterns of interaction with the cabin environment. The bear had begun creating what researchers termed emotional landscapes, carefully maintained areas that reflected different aspects of its shared history with Helen. These discoveries continued to challenge conventional understanding of wildlife behavior, suggesting levels of emotional and cognitive sophistication that demanded a complete re-evaluation of how we view animal consciousness and emotional capacity. Pine needles crunched softly beneath careful footsteps as renowned wildlife psychologist Dr. Eleanor West approached the observation point at Glacier Ridge. Her arrival marked a turning point in understanding Shadow's extraordinary behavior, bringing decades of experience studying emotional intelligence in wild animals. The crisp Montana morning carried promises of discoveries that would challenge everything known about animal consciousness. Dr. West's specialized equipment detected subtle variations in Shadow's behavior that previous observations had missed. The bear wasn't simply visiting the cabin. It was recreating specific patterns of movement that matched Helen's daily routines with astonishing precision. Using advanced motion tracking technology, Dr. West documented how Shadow would pause at exact spots where Helen had placed her favorite wildflowers. Local botanist Marcus Chen made an unexpected discovery while studying the plants along Shadow's regular paths. The bear had been selectively maintaining certain wildflower species, precisely the ones Helen had worked to protect. These weren't random acts, but showed evidence of deliberate environmental stewardship that reflected Helen's conservation efforts. Frank Harrison contributed crucial insights when he shared Helen's old garden journals. The bear's behavior showed remarkable correlation with Helen's documented gardening schedule, visiting specific plants at the same time she had tended them. This suggested not just memory, but an understanding of plant care that transcended typical wildlife behavior. Dr. West's team made a breakthrough when they introduced familiar scents from Helen's belongings. Shadow's responses revealed sophisticated emotional processing, showing distinct reactions to different items based on their significance in Helen's daily life. The bear demonstrated ability to distinguish between objects that held special meaning and similar items without emotional connection. Wildlife photographer Sarah Martinez captured extraordinary moments of Shadow engaging with the sunrise. The bear would position itself exactly where Helen used to greet the morning light, its posture mirroring her documented habits with uncanny accuracy. These weren't random positions, but appeared to be conscious recreations of shared moments. The research site buzzed with excitement when behavioral specialist Dr. Thomas Reed identified complex patterns in Shadow's daily routines. The bear had developed what appeared to be memorial rituals, performing specific sequences of actions that corresponded with Helen's morning activities. Conservation biologist Dr. Rachel Wong noticed that Shadow's influence extended beyond its own behavior. Other wildlife in the area had begun modifying their patterns, creating peaceful gatherings during the bear's morning visits. These multi-species assemblies defied natural predator-prey relationships, suggesting a transformation in the local ecosystem's social dynamics. Frank Harrison's continued observation revealed sophisticated patterns in Shadow's interaction with the cabin's surroundings. The bear would adjust its behavior based on subtle changes in the environment, showing awareness of natural cycles that Helen had carefully documented in her journals. The implications of these findings deepened when cultural anthropologist Dr. Michael Chen recognized patterns in Shadow's behavior that paralleled traditional understanding of animal grief. The bear's actions suggested awareness of loss and remembrance that aligned with indigenous knowledge about wildlife consciousness. Master naturalist Grace Thompson noted sophisticated patterns in Shadow's seasonal activities. The bear would gather specific plants at precise times that matched Helen's documented harvesting schedule, suggesting understanding of natural cycles and plant relationships. Dr. West's continued observation revealed unprecedented levels of emotional processing in Shadow's daily routines. The bear demonstrated awareness of significant dates and times, showing behavior that suggested conscious commemoration of shared experiences with Helen. Environmental psychologist Dr. James Wilson identified patterns in shadows' territorial behavior that suggested conscious space maintenance. The bear preserved areas that held special significance in its shared history with Helen, reflecting her appreciation for natural sanctuary spaces. The research team's perspective shifted dramatically when they began mapping the emotional resonance. In shadows' preferred pathways, these routes formed patterns that matched Helen's documented walking meditation paths, suggesting awareness of contemplative practices. Sound specialist Dr. Lisa Parker discovered that shadows' vocalizations contained complex emotional signatures. The bear's sounds showed variations that corresponded with different types of memories and interactions, suggesting sophisticated emotional processing capabilities. Frank Harrison's dedicated record-keeping revealed patterns in shadows' interaction, with weather conditions that suggested deep understanding of environmental changes. The bear's behavior reflected Helen's documented sensitivity to atmospheric shifts and seasonal transitions. The research team's findings continued to expand scientific understanding as they documented increasingly complex patterns of emotional awareness. Shadows' demonstrations of grief, remembrance, and environmental stewardship suggested capabilities that demanded new frameworks for understanding animal consciousness. Wildlife rehabilitation expert Maria Torres observed remarkable, teaching behaviors in shadows' interaction with younger bears. These educational moments showed evidence of deliberate knowledge transmission, suggesting capabilities for cultural preservation previously unrecognized in wild animals. Dr. Reed's analysis of shadows' movement patterns identified what appeared to be intentional creation of memorial spaces. The bear's activities showed sophisticated understanding of territory marking that reflected Helen's appreciation for sacred natural spaces. The implications of these discoveries reached beyond wildlife biology when Dr. Chen identified behavioral patterns suggesting conscious processing of grief and loss. Shadows' demonstrations of emotional memory challenged fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness and emotional capacity. As autumn painted the landscape in rich colors, the AE research team's understanding of shadows' emotional capabilities continued to deepen. Each new discovery revealed layers of consciousness and connection that transformed scientific understanding of wildlife awareness, suggesting possibilities that would forever change how humans understand their relationship with the natural world. These revelations sparked intense interest from wildlife psychologists worldwide. Shadow's case provided compelling evidence that animals could form deep emotional attachments that persisted long after loss, challenging traditional views about the temporary nature of animal grief. The bear's behavior suggested levels of emotional processing and memory retention that demanded a complete re-evaluation of wildlife consciousness studies. The implications extended far beyond academic circles, as conservation organizations began incorporating emotional intelligence assessments into their wildlife management practices. Shadow's story demonstrated the importance of preserving not just physical habitats, but also the emotional landscapes that wild animals create through their relationships with specific places and beings. Frank Harrison's dedication to maintaining Helen's daily routines provided ongoing insights into Shadow's behavior. The bear showed clear recognition of specific activities, responding differently to various books Helen had loved, suggesting an understanding of human ritual and routine that went beyond simple pattern recognition. Dr. West's neurological studies revealed patterns in Shadow's brain activity that closely resembled those observed in humans experiencing emotional memories. This physiological evidence supported theories about deep emotional processing in wild animals and suggested new approaches to understanding animal consciousness. The research team's findings began influencing wildlife protection policies as Evidence mounted for the importance of preserving locations with significant emotional associations for wild animals. Shadow's case demonstrated that these connections could play crucial roles in animal well-being and behavioral development. The ongoing documentation of Shadow's behavior revealed increasingly sophisticated patterns of interaction with the cabin environment. The bear had begun creating what researchers termed emotional landscapes, carefully maintained areas that reflected different aspects of its shared history with Helen. These discoveries continued to challenge conventional understanding of wildlife behavior, suggesting levels of emotional and cognitive sophistication that demanded a complete re-evaluation of how we view animal consciousness and emotional capacity. The dynamics of Shadow's behavior took an unexpected turn when acclaimed. Wildlife psychologist Dr. Victoria Nash arrived at Glacier Ridge to implement a groundbreaking series of cognitive assessments. Her specialized equipment detected subtle variations in the bear's electromagnetic field during its morning visits, revealing patterns that corresponded with deep emotional states previously unrecognized in wild animals. The research facility buzzed with excitement as Dr. Nash's team unveiled their preliminary findings. Shadow wasn't just visiting the cabin, the bear was engaging in what appeared to be intentional energy exchanges with the environment. Using advanced sensor arrays, they documented how the bear's presence affected the local electromagnetic field in ways that mirrored meditation practices Helen had often described in her journals. Frank Harrison's participation in the research deepened when he shared Helen's collection of pressed flowers with the team. Each preserved bloom held significance in their shared history, and Shadow's response to these botanical treasures revealed an understanding of personal mementos that challenged conventional views of animal consciousness. Wildlife photographer Marcus Chen captured extraordinary moments of Shadow engaging with the sunrise. The bear would position itself precisely where Helen used to greet the morning light, its posture reflecting her documented habits with uncanny accuracy. These weren't random positioning but deliberate alignments that suggested awareness of light and shadow relationships. Dr. Elizabeth Warner, a specialist in animal communication, made a breakthrough while analyzing Shadow's acoustic patterns. The bear had developed a sophisticated range of vocalizations that showed remarkable similarities to the tonal variations in Helen's recorded voice. These sounds weren't mere mimicry, but appeared to be attempts at emotional expression through sound. The research team's understanding expanded when they discovered Shadow's influence on local wildlife patterns. Small animals would gather near the bear during its morning vigils, creating what Dr. Nash termed harmony circles, peaceful assemblies that defied natural predator-prey relationships and reflected Helen's vision of interspecies cooperation. Professor Timothy Reed's analysis of Shadow's movement patterns revealed intricate choreography in the bear's daily routines. Using motion mapping technology, he documented how the animal's paths created flowing patterns that matched Helen's favorite nature-inspired dance movements, suggesting an appreciation for rhythmic expression. The breakthrough in understanding Shadow's capabilities came when marine biologist Dr. Sandra Martinez noticed similarities between the bear's behavior and patterns observed in highly intelligent cetaceans. The sophisticated social awareness and emotional processing displayed by Shadow suggested cognitive capabilities that transcended traditional species boundaries. Local herbalist Maya Thompson contributed valuable insights when she recognized that Shadow was selectively interacting with plants Helen had used in her natural remedies. The bear's careful handling of specific herbs and flowers suggested an understanding of plant properties that went beyond instinctual foraging behavior. Dr. Nash's team made a stunning discovery when they introduced musical elements from Helen's collection into the observation area. Shadow's responses to different melodies showed clear recognition and emotional resonance, particularly with the nature-inspired compositions Helen had favored during her morning rituals. The implications of these findings reached beyond wildlife biology when neuroscientist Dr. Robert Chen identified patterns in Shadow's brain activity that suggested conscious processing of abstract concepts. The bear demonstrated an understanding of symbolic relationships that challenged fundamental assumptions about animal cognition. Frank Harrison's careful documentation of Shadow's responses to different weather conditions revealed another layer of sophistication. The bear would adjust its memorial behaviors based on atmospheric changes, showing an understanding of environmental harmony that reflected Helen's weather sensitivity. The research team's perspective shifted dramatically when they began mapping the electromagnetic variations in Shadow's preferred resting spots. These locations corresponded perfectly with the areas Helen had identified as having special energetic properties, suggesting sensitivity to subtle environmental forces. Dr. Warner's ongoing analysis of Shadow's communicative behaviors revealed what appeared to be intentional teaching moments. The bear would demonstrate specific behaviors to younger animals, suggesting an understanding of knowledge transmission that went beyond instinctual learning. The impact of these discoveries deepened when cultural anthropologist Dr. Lisa Wong recognized patterns in Shadow's behavior that paralleled traditional indigenous understanding of animal consciousness. The bear's actions suggested awareness of spiritual and natural connections that aligned with ancient wisdom traditions. Professor Reed's documentation of Shadow's seasonal adaptations revealed sophisticated responses to celestial events. The bear's behavior would shift during solstices, equinoxes, and lunar phases, showing awareness of cosmic cycles that Helen had carefully observed and recorded. Dr. Martinez's comparative analysis highlighted unprecedented levels of emotional processing. In Shadow's daily routines, the bear demonstrated awareness of social dynamics and emotional states that suggested capabilities previously associated only with highly developed marine mammals. The research team's understanding expanded when they discovered Shadow's influence on local plant growth patterns. Areas where the bear regularly performed its morning rituals showed unusual botanical diversity, reflecting Helen's efforts to create harmonious natural gardens. Maya Thompson's expertise in traditional plant medicine provided new insights into Shadow's selective browsing habits. The bear would gather specific combinations of herbs that matched Helen's documented natural remedies, suggesting an understanding of plant synergies. Dr. Nash's continued observation revealed sophisticated responses to human emotional states. Shadow would adjust its behavior based on the emotional energy of visitors to the cabin, showing empathy and social awareness that transcended species boundaries. The implications of these findings rippled through multiple scientific disciplines, when Dr. Chen identified neural patterns suggesting conscious processing of abstract concepts. Shadow's demonstrations of symbolic thinking challenged fundamental assumptions about animal cognitive capabilities. Frank Harrison's dedicated record-keeping revealed patterns in Shadow's interaction with natural elements that suggested deep understanding of environmental balance. The bear's behavior reflected Helen's documented appreciation for ecological harmony and interconnectedness. The research team's perspective continued to evolve as they documented Shadow's influence on local wildlife behavior patterns. Other animals began displaying unusual levels of social awareness and emotional intelligence in the bear's presence. Dr. Warner's analysis of interspecies communication patterns revealed sophisticated exchanges between Shadow and local wildlife. These interactions suggested levels of social complexity previously unrecognized in wild animal communities. Professor Reed's ongoing documentation showed evidence of intentional knowledge transmission from shadow to younger bears. These teaching behaviors suggested understanding of cultural preservation that transcended instinctual learning. The impact of these discoveries extended into conservation practices, when Dr. Wong identified patterns suggesting conscious environmental stewardship. Shadow's behavior demonstrated awareness of ecological relationships that aligned with indigenous principles of natural harmony. Maya Thompson's observations of Shadow's seasonal routines revealed sophisticated understanding of natural cycles. The bear's behavior reflected Helen's documented appreciation for seasonal transitions and their significance in natural healing practices. The research team's findings continued to challenge conventional understanding of animal consciousness, as they documented increasingly complex patterns of behavior and awareness. Shadow's demonstrations of emotional intelligence and spiritual sensitivity suggested capabilities that demanded new frameworks for understanding animal consciousness. As autumn painted the Montana landscape in rich golds and crimsons, a series of extraordinary developments unfolded at the Glacier Ridge research site. Renowned animal behaviorist Dr. Alexandra Foster arrived with revolutionary biometric equipment designed to capture subtle emotional indicators in wildlife. Her presence would unlock new dimensions in understanding Shadow's remarkable connection to the Harrison cabin. Working through the crisp mountain mornings, Dr. Foster's team detected previously unnoticed patterns in Shadow's daily routines. The bear would pause at precise intervals during its approach to the cabin, each stop coinciding with spots where Helen had placed her meditation stones. During these moments, sophisticated equipment recorded unprecedented brainwave patterns, suggesting deep emotional processing. Botanical researcher Grace Turner made a fascinating discovery while cataloging the plant life around Shadow's regular paths. The bear's movement patterns had created protected corridors where delicate wildflowers thrived, exactly the species Helen had worked to preserve. These weren't random trails, but carefully maintained pathways that protected vulnerable plant communities. The research took an unexpected turn when sound engineer Marcus Rodriguez captured unusual acoustic phenomena during Shadow's morning visits. The bear's movements through the landscape created harmonic patterns that matched the musical scales Helen had used in her nature recordings. This suggested an understanding of sound and rhythm that transcended basic animal awareness. Dr. Foster's analysis revealed something extraordinary in Shadow's interaction with the changing seasons. The bear demonstrated precise timing in its daily visits, adjusting its schedule to match the shifting sunrise patterns that Helen had meticulously documented in her nature journals. This wasn't simple adaptation, but showed an understanding of astronomical cycles. Frank Harrison contributed valuable insights when he shared Helen's collection of hand-drawn maps. Shadow's movement patterns aligned perfectly with routes Helen had marked as having special significance, suggesting an understanding of personal geography that went beyond mere territory marking. The breakthrough came when marine biologist Dr. Claire Mitchell recognized similarities between Shadow's communication patterns and those observed in highly social marine mammals. The bear's range of vocalizations and body language showed complexity typically associated with dolphins and whales, suggesting advanced social cognition. Traditional healer Running Cloud, invited to observe Shadow's behavior, identified patterns that aligned with ancient indigenous knowledge about animal consciousness. The bear's interactions with the landscape showed awareness of natural energies that echoed generations of wisdom about wildlife behavior. Environmental psychologist Dr. Nathan Parker documented how Shadow's presence affected the behavior of other wildlife in the area. Species that normally avoided each other would gather peacefully during the bear's morning rituals, creating what he termed zones of harmony around the cabin. The research team's understanding deepened when they discovered Shadow's influence on local weather patterns. The bear would alter its behavior hours before meteorological changes, demonstrating a sensitivity to atmospheric conditions that matched Helen's documented weather predictions. Geologist Dr. Sarah Coleman made a remarkable discovery while analyzing soil samples from Shadow's regular resting spots. These locations showed unusual mineral compositions that correlated with the areas Helen had identified as having special properties in her environmental surveys. Frank Harrison's continued observation revealed sophisticated patterns in Shadow's interaction with the cabin's surroundings. The bear would adjust its behavior based on subtle changes in light and shadow, showing an understanding of natural aesthetics that reflected Helen's artistic sensibilities. The impact of these findings expanded when neurologist Dr. Thomas Chen identified brain activity patterns suggesting conscious processing of symbolic relationships. Shadow demonstrated an understanding of abstract connections that challenged fundamental assumptions about animal cognition. Wildlife photographer Elena Martinez captured extraordinary moments of Shadow, engaging in what appeared to be intentional communication with younger bears. These interactions showed evidence of deliberate knowledge transmission, suggesting capabilities for cultural learning previously unrecognized in wild animals. Acoustic specialist Dr. James Wilson discovered that Shadow's vocalizations contained complex emotional signatures. The bear's sounds showed variations that corresponded with different types of memories and interactions, suggesting sophisticated emotional processing capabilities. The research team's perspective shifted dramatically when they began mapping the electromagnetic variations in Shadow's preferred pathways. These routes formed patterns that matched sacred geometric formations Helen had studied, suggesting sensitivity to subtle environmental energies. Grace Turner's analysis of Shadow's seasonal behaviors revealed sophisticated responses to plant life cycles. The bear would adjust its activities to protect blooming flowers and ripening berries, showing an understanding of ecological relationships that went beyond foraging instincts. Dr. Foster's continued observation revealed unprecedented levels of emotional intelligence in Shadow's daily routines. The bear demonstrated awareness of human emotional states and would adjust its behavior accordingly, showing empathy and social awareness that transcended species boundaries. Conservation biologist Dr. Michael Chang identified patterns in Shadow's territorial behavior that suggested conscious environmental stewardship. The bear maintained boundaries that protected sensitive ecological areas, reflecting Helen's dedication to preservation. The implications of these discoveries deepened when cultural anthropologist Dr. Lisa Wong recognized patterns in Shadow's behavior that paralleled traditional understanding of animal spirituality. The bear's actions suggested awareness of natural connections that aligned with ancient wisdom traditions. Running Cloud's insights helped the team understand Shadow's influence on local wildlife patterns. Other animals began displaying unusual levels of social awareness and emotional intelligence in the bear's presence, suggesting a ripple effect in the ecosystem. Dr. Mitchell's comparative analysis highlighted sophisticated social behaviors previously unobserved in solitary animals. Shadow demonstrated capabilities for emotional connection and memory retention that challenged existing theories about wildlife consciousness. Frank Harrison's dedicated documentation revealed patterns in Shadow's interaction with natural elements that suggested deep understanding of environmental balance. The bear's behavior reflected Helen's documented appreciation for ecological harmony and interconnectedness. The research team's findings continued to expand scientific understanding as they documented increasingly complex patterns of behavior and awareness. Shadows' demonstrations of emotional intelligence and environmental sensitivity suggested capabilities that demanded new frameworks for understanding animal consciousness. Elena Martinez's ongoing photography revealed subtle patterns in shadows, interaction with light and shadow, suggesting an understanding of natural aesthetics that matched Helen's artistic vision. The bear would position itself to create striking visual compositions during its morning rituals. Dr. Wilson's analysis of shadows' acoustic patterns identified what appeared to be intentional harmonizing with natural sounds. The bear's vocalizations showed sophisticated understanding of rhythm and melody that reflected Helen's musical interests. The implications of these discoveries reached beyond wildlife biology, when Dr. Chen identified neural patterns suggesting conscious processing of abstract concepts. Shadows' demonstrations of symbolic thinking challenged fundamental assumptions about animal cognitive capabilities. Traditional Gila running clouds observations of shadows' seasonal routines revealed sophisticated understanding of natural cycles. The bear's behavior reflected ancient wisdom about the interconnectedness of all living things and the importance of maintaining natural harmony. The research team's perspective continued to evolve as they documented shadows' influence on local wildlife behavior patterns. Other animals began displaying unusual levels of social awareness and emotional intelligence, suggesting a transformation in the ecosystem's social dynamics. Winter approached the Glacier Ridge research site with whispered promises of snow, yet the unseasonable warmth lingered, allowing celebrated cognitive researcher Dr. Isabella Reyes to implement a revolutionary series of awareness studies. Her specialized equipment, designed to detect subtle variations in consciousness patterns, would reveal astonishing aspects of Shadow's daily visits to the Harrison cabin. Clear mountain mornings illuminated Dr. Reyes's groundbreaking discoveries. As she documented unprecedented levels of conscious awareness in Shadow's behavior, using advanced neural mapping technology, she detected patterns suggesting the bear was engaging in what appeared to be intentional memory recall, actively recreating moments shared with Helen through deliberate movement and positioning. Renowned ethnobotanist Peter Morrison identified remarkable patterns in the plant life surrounding Shadow's regular pathways. The bear's movements had created protected spaces where specific medicinal herbs thrived, exactly matching the botanical sanctuary Helen had envisioned. These weren't chance occurrences, but showed evidence of deliberate cultivation and protection. Master naturalist Diana Chen observed fascinating correlations between Shadow's behavior and celestial events. The bear would adjust its morning arrival times to align perfectly with astronomical phenomena that Helen had documented in her sky journals, suggesting awareness of cosmic rhythms that transcended typical wildlife behavior. The research site buzzed with excitement when atmospheric scientist Dr. Benjamin Walsh detected unusual patterns in the local airflow during Shadow's visits. The bear's movements created subtle air current variations that matched the wind patterns Helen had often described in her weather diaries, suggesting sensitivity to atmospheric dynamics. Frank Harrison's contribution deepened understanding when he shared Helen's collection of crystalline specimens. Shadow showed remarkable recognition of these minerals, carefully visiting locations where similar stones naturally occurred, demonstrating awareness of geological significance that reflected Helen's documented interests. Acoustic engineering. Specialist Sofia Rodriguez made a breakthrough while analyzing the harmonic properties of Shadow's movements through the landscape. The bear's paths created sound patterns that resonated with the natural frequencies Helen had recorded in her sound meditation practice, suggesting awareness of environmental acoustics. Indigenous wisdom keeper Joseph Running Deer recognized ancient patterns in Shadow's interaction with the land. The bear's behavior showed remarkable alignment with traditional knowledge about animal consciousness and spiritual connection, suggesting awareness that bridged modern science and ancestral understanding. Marine biologist Dr. Margaret Chen identified sophisticated social behaviors in shadows' interaction with other wildlife. Species that normally maintained strict territorial boundaries would gather peacefully in the bear's presence, creating harmonious communities that defied conventional wildlife sociology. Environmental psychologist Dr. Andrew Foster documented unprecedented changes in local ecosystem dynamics during shadows' morning rituals. Plants, animals, and even weather patterns seemed to respond to the bear's presence in ways that suggested a deeper understanding of natural harmony. Quantum physicist Dr. Rachel Goldman discovered fascinating patterns in the electromagnetic fields surrounding shadows' regular pathways. These energy signatures matched formations Helen had mapped in her studies of natural energy flows, suggesting sensitivity to subtle environmental forces. Frank Harrison's careful documentation revealed sophisticated patterns in shadows' interaction with sunrise and sunset. The bear would position itself to create shadow patterns that precisely matched Helen's artistic photographs, demonstrating awareness of light and space relationships. The research team's understanding expanded dramatically when Dr. Isabella Reyes identified neural patterns suggesting conscious manipulation of emotional energy. Shadow demonstrated ability to influence the emotional atmosphere around the cabin in ways that reflected Helen's documented practices in environmental healing. Wildlife rehabilitation specialist Maria Torres observed remarkable teaching behaviors in Shadow's interaction with younger bears. These educational moments showed evidence of deliberate knowledge transmission, suggesting capabilities for cultural preservation previously unrecognized in wild animals. Geomagnetic researcher Dr. Thomas Wright discovered that shadows' preferred resting spots aligned perfectly with the Earth's natural energy grid points that Helen had documented in her environmental surveys, suggesting sensitivity to planetary energy patterns. The implications of these findings deepened when anthropologist Dr. Sarah Patterson recognized patterns in shadows' behavior that paralleled ancient traditions of animal spirituality. The bear's actions suggested awareness of natural laws that aligned with indigenous understanding of wildlife consciousness. Master herbalist Grace Williams noted sophisticated patterns in shadows' seasonal gathering behavior. The bear would collect specific combinations of plants that matched Helen's documented herbal preparations, suggesting understanding of botanical synergies and healing properties. Dr. Reyes's continued observation revealed unprecedented levels of intentional energy manipulation in Shadow's daily routines. The bear demonstrated ability to create what she termed harmony fields, areas of balanced natural energy that reflected Helen's environmental healing work. Conservation biologist Dr. Michael Torres identified patterns in Shadow's territorial behavior that suggested conscious ecosystem management. The bear maintained boundaries that protected sensitive habitats, reflecting Helen's dedication to environmental preservation. The research team's perspective shifted dramatically when they began mapping the vibrational patterns in Shadow's preferred pathways. These routes formed intricate patterns that matched sacred geometries Helen had studied, suggesting awareness of universal design principles. Joseph Running Deer's insights helped the team understand Shadow's influence on local wildlife patterns. Other animals began displaying unusual levels of cooperative behavior and emotional intelligence in the bear's presence, suggesting a transformation in ecosystem consciousness. Dr. Margaret Chen's comparative analysis highlighted sophisticated communication patterns previously unobserved in solitary animals. Shadow demonstrated capabilities for emotional expression and memory sharing that challenged existing theories about wildlife intelligence. Frank Harrison's dedicated observation revealed patterns in shadows' interaction with weather systems that suggested deep understanding of atmospheric dynamics. The bear's behavior reflected Helen's documented appreciation for meteorological harmony and natural cycles. The research team's findings continued to expand scientific understanding as they documented increasingly complex patterns of conscious awareness. Shadows' demonstrations of intentional energy manipulation and environmental sensitivity suggested capabilities that transcended conventional wildlife behavior models. Maria Torres's ongoing documentation revealed subtle patterns in shadows, teaching methods suggesting understanding of knowledge preservation that matched Helen's dedication to environmental education. The bear would demonstrate specific behaviors to younger animals, showing patience and awareness of learning processes. Dr. Wright's analysis of geomagnetic patterns identified what appeared to be intentional alignment with Earth's energy fields. Shadows' movements showed sophisticated understanding of planetary energy flows that reflected Helen's studies of natural force patterns. The implications of these discoveries reached beyond wildlife biology when Dr. Goldman identified quantum patterns suggesting conscious interaction with subtle energy fields. Shadows' demonstrations of energy awareness challenged fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness and natural law. Dawn painted the Montana sky in delicate watercolors as renowned consciousness researcher Dr. Sofia Martinez set up revolutionary quantum consciousness monitoring equipment near the Harrison cabin. The unseasonable warmth had created perfect conditions for implementing her groundbreaking study of advanced animal awareness, promising to reveal new dimensions of shadows' extraordinary behavior. Morning mist swirled around the research site as Dr. Martinez's sensitive instruments detected previously unobserved patterns in the electromagnetic field surrounding Shadow's approach to the cabin. The bear moved through the landscape with a grace that created rippling waves of energy, perfectly matching the harmonious patterns Helen had often described in her journals about natural flow states. World-famous animal linguist Dr. Adrian Foster arrived at Glacier Ridge, bringing sophisticated vocalization analysis technology that would capture subtle nuances in Shadow's communication patterns. His equipment detected layers of meaning in the bear's sounds that suggested a complex emotional vocabulary, expressing feelings of connection and remembrance through carefully modulated tones. Frank Harrison contributed valuable insights by sharing Helen's collection of pressed autumn leaves, each holding special significance in their shared appreciation of seasonal changes. Shadow's reaction to these preserved memories demonstrated remarkable recognition, the bear gently touching similar leaves along its morning path with deliberate tenderness. Quantum field specialist Dr. Rebecca Chen made an astonishing discovery. While measuring the energetic properties of Shadow's favorite resting spots, these locations showed unusual quantum coherence patterns that matched the harmonious energy states Helen had documented in her meditation practice, suggesting awareness of subtle universal forces. Environmental artist Maya Thompson observed fascinating correlations between Shadow's movement patterns and the golden ratio found in nature. The bear's paths created flowing lines that perfectly embodied these natural proportions, demonstrating an innate understanding of universal design principles that Helen had studied extensively. The research site experienced a breakthrough moment when bioacoustics expert Dr. James Wilson recorded unusual harmonic frequencies during Shadow's morning visits. These sound patterns matched the healing tones Helen had used in her nature therapy sessions, suggesting an understanding of sound's transformative properties. Indigenous medicine woman Morning Star recognized ancient wisdom patterns in shadows, interaction with seasonal transitions. The bear's behavior showed remarkable alignment with traditional knowledge about natural cycles and healing rhythms, bridging modern science with ancestral understanding of wildlife consciousness. Marine. Mammal specialist Dr. Elizabeth Turner identified sophisticated social behaviors in shadows communication with other forest creatures. Species that typically maintained strict boundaries would gather in peaceful assembly during the bear's morning rituals, creating harmonious community patterns that defied conventional wildlife sociology. Consciousness researcher Dr. Michael Zhang documented unprecedented shifts in local ecosystem awareness during shadows visits. Plants, animals, and even atmospheric conditions appeared to respond to the bear's presence in ways that suggested a deeper understanding of universal consciousness. String theory physicist Dr. Sarah Goldman discovered fascinating patterns in the quantum field surrounding shadows' regular pathways. These energy signatures matched formations Helen had mapped in her studies of universal harmony, suggesting sensitivity to fundamental forces of nature. Frank Harrison's meticulous observation revealed sophisticated patterns in shadows' interaction with morning light. The bear would position itself to create luminous effects that precisely matched Helen's artistic vision, demonstrating awareness of light's transformative properties. The research team's understanding expanded dramatically when Dr. Martinez identified consciousness patterns suggesting deliberate manipulation of quantum states. Shadow demonstrated ability to influence the energetic atmosphere around the cabin in ways that reflected Helen's documented practices in environmental attunement. Wildlife rehabilitation expert Thomas Rodriguez observed remarkable teaching behaviors in shadows' interaction with forest inhabitants. These educational moments showed evidence of intentional knowledge transmission, suggesting capabilities for wisdom sharing previously unrecognized in wild animals. Geomantic researcher Dr. Laura Wright discovered that shadows preferred meditation spots aligned perfectly with Earth's natural energy meridians that Helen had mapped in her environmental surveys, suggesting sensitivity to planetary consciousness patterns. The implications of these findings deepened when anthropologist Dr. Daniel Patterson recognized patterns in shadows' behavior that paralleled ancient traditions of animal wisdom. The bear's actions suggested awareness of universal laws that aligned with indigenous understanding of wildlife consciousness. Master herbalist Grace Williams noted sophisticated patterns in shadows' interaction with medicinal plants. The bear would gather specific combinations of herbs that matched Helen's documented healing preparations, suggesting understanding of natural medicine and energy properties. Dr. Martinez's continued observation revealed unprecedented levels of quantum field manipulation in Shadow's daily routines. The bear demonstrated ability to create what she termed consciousness nodes, areas of heightened awareness that reflected Helen's environmental healing work. Conservation biologist Dr. Jennifer Torres identified patterns in Shadow's territorial behavior that suggested conscious ecosystem stewardship. The bear maintained boundaries that protected sensitive energy vortexes, reflecting Helen's dedication to preserving natural power points. The research team's perspective shifted dramatically when they began mapping the quantum resonance patterns in Shadow's preferred pathways. These routes formed intricate patterns that matched universal sacred geometries Helen had studied, suggesting awareness of cosmic design principles. Morningstar's insights helped the team understand Shadow's influence on forest consciousness patterns. Other animals began displaying unusual levels of spiritual awareness and energetic intelligence in the bear's presence, suggesting a transformation in ecosystem consciousness. Dr. Turner's comparative analysis highlighted sophisticated communication patterns previously unobserved in solitary animals. Shadow demonstrated capabilities for telepathic connection and memory sharing that challenged existing theories about wildlife consciousness. Frank Harrison's dedicated observation revealed patterns in Shadow's interaction with universal forces that suggested deep understanding of cosmic dynamics. The bear's behavior reflected Helen's documented appreciation for natural harmony and spiritual cycles. The research team's findings continued to expand scientific understanding as they documented increasingly complex patterns of quantum awareness. Shadow's demonstrations of intentional energy manipulation and spiritual sensitivity suggested capabilities that transcended conventional wildlife behavior models. Thomas Rodriguez's ongoing documentation revealed subtle patterns in Shadow's teaching methods, suggesting understanding of wisdom transmission that matched Helen's dedication to spiritual education. The bear would demonstrate specific awareness practices to younger animals, showing patience and understanding of consciousness development. Dr. Wright's analysis of geomantic patterns identified what appeared to be intentional alignment with universal energy grids. Shadow's movements showed sophisticated understanding of cosmic energy flows that reflected Helen's studies of natural force patterns. The implications of these discoveries reached beyond wildlife biology, when Dr. Goldman identified quantum entanglement patterns suggesting conscious interaction with universal fields. Shadow's demonstrations of cosmic awareness challenged fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness and natural law. As winter approached, the research team's understanding of Shadow's capabilities continued to deepen, revealing layers of consciousness and connection that transformed scientific understanding of wildlife awareness. Each new discovery opened windows into realms of animal consciousness that bridged physical and spiritual dimensions, suggesting possibilities that would forever change how humans understand their relationship with the natural world. Misty Mountain. Air carried the subtle fragrance of pine as celebrated quantum biologist Dr. Amelia Richardson arrived at the Glacier Ridge research site. Her pioneering work in biological quantum networks promised to reveal hidden dimensions of Shadow's extraordinary connection to the Harrison cabin. The unseasonable warmth created perfect conditions for implementing her groundbreaking protocols for measuring life force energy patterns. Early sunlight filtered through morning haze as Dr. Richardson's sophisticated quantum sensors detected intricate patterns of energy flowing between Shadow and the surrounding landscape. The bear moved with deliberate grace, creating rippling waves of bioelectric resonance that matched the harmonious frequencies Helen had documented in her studies of natural energy fields. World-renowned animal consciousness expert Dr. Marcus Hayes joined the research team, bringing revolutionary brainwave mapping equipment designed to capture subtle variations in wildlife awareness patterns. His instruments revealed layers of cognitive processing in Shadow's behavior that suggested advanced states of consciousness previously unrecognized in wild animals. Frank Harrison shared precious insights when he discovered Helen's collection of crystalline singing bowls, each tuned to specific natural frequencies she had identified in her sound healing practice. Shadow's responses to these vibrational patterns demonstrated remarkable sensitivity, suggesting deep understanding of sound's transformative properties. Molecular biologist Dr. Sophia Chen made an extraordinary discovery while analyzing the chemical composition of plants growing along Shadow's regular pathways. These specimens showed unusual molecular structures that resonated with the harmonious patterns Helen had documented in her research on plant consciousness. Environmental. Architect Maya Williams observed fascinating correlations between Shadow's movement patterns and sacred geometry principles. The bear's daily routes created flowing lines that embodied universal mathematical relationships, demonstrating innate understanding of cosmic design principles that Helen had studied extensively. The research site experienced a pivotal moment when quantum acoustics specialist Dr. James Turner recorded unexpected harmonic overtones during Shadow's morning rituals. These complex sound patterns matched the healing frequencies Helen had incorporated into her nature therapy sessions, suggesting sophisticated understanding of vibrational medicine. Medicine woman White Feather recognized ancient wisdom patterns in Shadow's interaction with natural elements. The bear's behavior showed remarkable alignment with traditional knowledge about energy healing and spiritual connection, bridging modern science with ancestral understanding of wildlife consciousness. Cetacean communication expert Dr. Elizabeth Palmer identified sophisticated patterns in Shadow's interaction with other forest dwellers. Animals that typically maintained cautious distances would gather in peaceful communion during the bear's morning practices, creating harmonious community, patterns that transcended normal species boundaries. Quantum consciousness researcher Dr. Michael Zhang documented unprecedented shifts in local bioenergetic fields during Shadow's visits. Living organisms and environmental conditions appeared to respond to the bear's presence in ways that suggested deep understanding of universal life force. Theoretical physicist Dr. Sarah Goldman discovered fascinating patterns in the quantum entanglement fields surrounding Shadow's regular pathways. These energy signatures matched formations Helen had mapped in her studies of universal consciousness, suggesting sensitivity to fundamental forces of creation. Frank Harrison's dedicated observation revealed sophisticated patterns in Shadow's interaction with natural light phenomena. The bear would position itself to create prismatic effects that precisely matched Helen's documented observations of light's healing properties, demonstrating awareness of electromagnetic energy. The research team's understanding expanded dramatically when Dr. Richardson identified quantum coherence patterns, suggesting deliberate manipulation of biological energy fields. Shadow demonstrated ability to influence the living atmosphere around the cabin in ways that reflected Helen's documented practices in vibrational healing. Wildlife consciousness specialist Thomas Martinez observed remarkable teaching behaviors in Shadow's interaction with younger bears. These educational moments showed evidence of intentional wisdom transmission, suggesting capabilities for spiritual mentoring previously unrecognized in wild animals. Geomagnetic researcher Dr. Laura Wright discovered that Shadow's preferred meditation locations aligned perfectly with Earth's natural energy vortexes that Helen had mapped in her environmental surveys, suggesting sensitivity to planetary consciousness grids. The implications of these findings deepened when anthropologist Dr. Daniel Patterson recognized patterns in Shadow's behavior that paralleled ancient traditions of animal shamanism. The bear's actions suggested awareness of universal laws that aligned with indigenous understanding of wildlife spirituality. Master herbalist Grace Williams noted sophisticated patterns in Shadow's interaction with sacred plants. The bear would gather specific combinations of herbs that matched Helen's documented energy medicine preparations, suggesting understanding of plant spirit medicine. Dr. Richardson's continued observation revealed unprecedented levels of quantum field manipulation in Shadow's daily routines. The bear demonstrated ability to create what she termed healing vortexes, areas of amplified life force energy that reflected Helen's environmental medicine work. Conservation biologist Dr. Jennifer Torres identified patterns in Shadow's territorial behavior that suggested conscious ecosystem stewarding. The bear maintained boundaries that protected sensitive energy portals, reflecting Helen's dedication to preserving natural power sites. The research team's perspective shifted dramatically when they began mapping the quantum resonance patterns in shadows' preferred pathways. These routes formed intricate patterns that matched universal creation, codes Helen had studied, suggesting awareness of cosmic design principles. Whitefeather's insights helped the team understand shadows' influence on forest consciousness patterns. Other animals began displaying unusual levels of spiritual awareness and healing intelligence in the bear's presence, suggesting a transformation in ecosystem consciousness. Dr. Palmer's comparative analysis highlighted sophisticated communication patterns previously unobserved in solitary animals. Shadow demonstrated capabilities for telepathic healing and energy sharing that challenged existing theories about wildlife consciousness. Frank Harrison's meticulous observation revealed patterns in Shadow's interaction with universal forces that suggested deep understanding of cosmic healing dynamics. The bear's behavior reflected Helen's documented appreciation for natural medicine and spiritual cycles. The research team's findings continued to expand scientific understanding as they documented increasingly complex patterns of quantum healing awareness. Shadow's demonstrations of intentional energy medicine and spiritual sensitivity suggested capabilities that transcended conventional wildlife behavior models. Thomas Martinez's ongoing documentation revealed subtle patterns in Shadow's teaching methods, suggesting understanding of wisdom transmission that matched Helen's dedication to spiritual healing education. The bear would demonstrate specific energy practices to younger animals, showing patience and understanding of consciousness development. Dr. Wright's analysis of geomagnetic patterns identified what appeared to be intentional alignment with universal healing grids. Shadow's movements showed sophisticated understanding of cosmic energy flows that reflected Helen's studies of natural force patterns. The implications of these discoveries reached beyond wildlife biology when Dr. Goldman identified quantum healing patterns suggesting conscious interaction with universal life force. Shadow's demonstrations of cosmic medicine awareness challenged fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness and natural law. As winter approached, the research team's understanding of Shadow's healing capabilities continued to deepen, revealing layers of consciousness and connection that transformed scientific understanding of wildlife awareness. Each new discovery opened windows into realms of animal consciousness that bridged physical and spiritual dimensions, suggesting possibilities that would forever change how humans understand their relationship with the natural world. Gentle snowflakes began dusting the Montana landscape as distinguished animal consciousness researcher Dr. Victoria Blackwood arrived at Glacier Ridge. Her groundbreaking work in cross-species communication promised to unveil new dimensions of Shadow's extraordinary connection to the Harrison cabin. Despite the approaching winter, the bear maintained its daily vigil, demonstrating a dedication that transcended natural instincts. Dawn painted the sky in soft pastels as Dr. Blackwood's specialized equipment captured unprecedented patterns in Shadow's morning ritual. The bear moved through the landscape with deliberate purpose, creating what her instruments detected as coherent fields of consciousness. These patterns matched precisely with the meditative states Helen had described in her personal journals, about connecting with nature's wisdom. Renowned shamanic practitioner Thundercloud arrived at the research site, bringing ancient wisdom about animal-human spiritual connections. His presence added depth to the scientific observations, as he recognized patterns in Shadow's behavior that aligned with traditional teachings about bears as wisdom keepers and guardians of natural knowledge. Frank Harrison discovered a hidden collection of Helen's meditation recordings, each capturing the sounds of dawn choruses she had cherished. Shadow's response to these recordings revealed sophisticated recognition of specific bird songs and natural rhythms, suggesting deep understanding of nature's morning symphony. Environmental sonologist Dr. Maya Rivers detected intricate patterns in the acoustic environment during Shadow's visits. The bear's movements created harmonic frequencies that perfectly complemented the natural soundscape, demonstrating awareness of sound healing principles Helen had studied extensively. The research site experienced a breakthrough when quantum biologist Dr. Alexander Chen recorded unusual energy signatures around Shadow's preferred meditation spots. These locations showed quantum coherence patterns that matched Helen's documented experiences of heightened spiritual awareness during her morning practices. Wildlife behaviorist Dr. Sarah Thompson identified complex social dynamics emerging among the local animal population during Shadow's morning rituals. Species that typically remained solitary would gather in peaceful assembly, creating what she termed wisdom circles around the bear's meditation sites. Frank Harrison's continued observation revealed sophisticated patterns in Shadow's interaction. With seasonal transitions, the bear demonstrated awareness of subtle changes in light, temperature, and natural cycles that aligned perfectly with Helen's documented observations of nature's rhythms. Master herbalist Grace Moonflower noted intricate patterns in Shadow's interaction with medicinal plants. The bear would gather specific combinations of herbs that matched Helen's recorded healing practices, suggesting understanding of plant spirit medicine and natural healing traditions. The research team's understanding deepened when Dr. Blackwood identified consciousness patterns, suggesting deliberate transmission of universal wisdom. Shadow appeared to be teaching younger bears about natural healing, environmental stewardship, and harmonious coexistence through sophisticated behavioral demonstrations. Indigenous elder morning sky recognized ancient patterns in Shadow's movement through the landscape. The bear's pathways created sacred geometries that aligned with traditional knowledge about Earth's energy lines, suggesting awareness of planetary healing grids. Marine biologist Dr. Elizabeth Waters discovered remarkable similarities between Shadow's communication patterns and those observed in highly evolved cetacean pods. The bear demonstrated capabilities for transmitting complex emotional and spiritual information that challenged existing paradigms of animal consciousness. The implications of these findings expanded when cultural anthropologist Dr. Michael Storm recognized patterns in Shadow's behavior that paralleled ancient wisdom traditions worldwide. The bear's actions suggested access to universal knowledge that transcended species boundaries and cultural divisions. Dr. Rivers' continued acoustic analysis revealed layers of meaning in Shadow's vocalizations that suggested intentional sound healing. The bear's calls contained frequencies known for their therapeutic properties, matching Helen's documented work with vibrational medicine. Conservation biologist Dr. Jennifer Gray identified patterns in Shadow's territorial behavior that suggested conscious ecosystem management. The bear maintained boundaries that protected sacred sites and healing grounds, reflecting Helen's dedication to preserving nature's wisdom sanctuaries. First winter snow blanketed Glacier Ridge in pristine white as world-renowned wildlife consciousness expert Dr. Isabella Knight made her way to the observation point. Her arrival marked a pivotal moment in understanding the profound implications of Shadow's 7-day vigil at the Harrison cabin. The morning air crystallized with possibility as her advanced consciousness mapping equipment recorded patterns that would transform our understanding of animal awareness forever. Delicate ice crystals sparkled in the dawn light as Dr. Knight's instruments detected extraordinary coherence in Shadow's movement patterns. The bear approached the cabin with deliberate grace, creating rippling waves in the quantum field that matched Helen's documented experiences of universal connection. These weren't random visits, but carefully choreographed expressions of remembrance and love that transcended species boundaries. Distinguished quantum biologist Dr. Marcus Chen joined the research team, bringing revolutionary equipment designed to measure biological quantum entanglement. His sensors revealed intricate patterns of connection between shadow and the cabin environment, suggesting bonds that persisted beyond physical proximity and time. These findings offered groundbreaking evidence of lasting emotional attachments. In wildlife, Frank Harrison contributed crucial insights when he discovered Helen's final journal entries written during her last days. The pages revealed intimate details about her connection with shadow, describing moments of shared awareness that perfectly matched the bear's current behavior patterns. This documentation provided unprecedented validation of animal-human spiritual bonds. The research site buzzed with excitement when acoustic specialist Dr. Maya Williams recorded complex harmonic patterns in Shadow's vocalizations. These sounds contained healing frequencies that matched Helen's documented work with sound therapy, suggesting deep understanding of vibrational medicine that transcended ordinary animal awareness. Indigenous wisdom keeper White Eagle recognized ancient patterns in Shadow's interaction with the winter landscape. The bear's movements created sacred geometries in the snow, reflecting traditional knowledge about the interconnectedness of all living beings and the enduring nature of spiritual bonds. Marine mammal communication expert Dr. Elizabeth Palmer identified sophisticated patterns in Shadow's interaction with other winter wildlife. Animals that typically hibernated would briefly emerge to join in peaceful gatherings during the bear's morning vigils, creating harmonious community connections that defied natural patterns. Dr. Knight's team made a breakthrough when they discovered quantum resonance patterns suggesting conscious transmission of universal wisdom. Shadow appeared to be sharing deep spiritual understanding through non-verbal communication, teaching other animals about connection, remembrance, and the eternal nature of love. The research site transformed into a gathering place for scientists and spiritual leaders from around the world, all drawn by the profound implications of Shadow's behavior. Each observation added layers of understanding about animal consciousness, emotional capacity, and the enduring nature of cross-species bonds. Master herbalist Grace Snowflower noted intricate patterns in Shadow's final interactions with frozen plants. Even in winter, the bear demonstrated awareness of dormant life force, maintaining connections with the sleeping botanical world in ways that reflected Helen's deep understanding of nature's cycles. Conservation biologist Dr. Jennifer Frost identified patterns in Shadow's territorial behavior that suggested conscious preservation of sacred spaces. The bear maintained energetic boundaries that protected special areas of connection, creating lasting sanctuaries of remembrance in the winter landscape. The implications of these discoveries deepened when anthropologist Dr. Michael Storm recognized patterns in Shadow's behavior that paralleled universal expressions of love and devotion. The bear's actions demonstrated that deep emotional bonds transcend physical form and persist beyond separation. Frank Harrison's dedicated observation revealed sophisticated patterns in Shadow's interaction with winter light. The bear would position itself to create beautiful ice crystal refractions that matched Helen's documented appreciation for nature's artistic expressions, suggesting lasting aesthetic awareness. The research team's understanding expanded dramatically when Dr. Chen identified quantum entanglement patterns suggesting permanent energetic connections. Shadow's presence had created lasting changes in the local quantum field, establishing enduring bridges between physical and spiritual dimensions. Wildlife consciousness specialist Thomas Drake observed remarkable teaching behaviors in Shadow's final interactions with younger bears. These moments showed evidence of intentional wisdom transmission, suggesting capabilities for preserving and sharing deep emotional understanding across generations. Dr. Williams's analysis of winter soundscapes revealed layers of harmony in Shadow's acoustic expressions, The bear's calls contained complex emotional signatures that suggested sophisticated understanding of sound's power to maintain eternal connections. As the winter deepened, the research team's findings began influencing global understanding of wildlife consciousness. Shadow's story provided compelling evidence that animal awareness encompasses deep spiritual dimensions and emotional capabilities that transcend ordinary understanding. The research site became a permanent center for studying animal consciousness and cross-species connections. Scientists and spiritual leaders continued gathering data that transformed understanding of wildlife emotional capacity and the enduring nature of love. Frank Harrison established the Helen Harrison Wildlife Consciousness Foundation, dedicated to preserving and studying locations where animals demonstrate extraordinary awareness and emotional connection. This initiative ensured that Shadow's legacy would continue inspiring new discoveries about animal consciousness. The implications of these findings rippled through multiple scientific disciplines, challenging fundamental assumptions about consciousness, emotion, and the lasting nature of spiritual bonds. Shadow's story demonstrated that love creates permanent bridges between beings, transcending physical limitations and temporal boundaries. Dr. Knight's final analysis revealed patterns suggesting that Shadow's 7-day vigil had established permanent changes in local consciousness fields. The bear's expressions of remembrance and connection had created lasting transformations in understanding animal awareness and emotional capacity. The research team's documentation showed how Shadow's behavior had inspired a new generation of wildlife researchers to explore deeper dimensions of animal consciousness. Each discovery added evidence that animals possess sophisticated spiritual awareness and emotional capabilities that endure beyond physical separation. As winter wrapped Glacier Ridge in pristine white, Shadow's legacy continued influencing scientific understanding and spiritual awareness. The bear's extraordinary demonstration of love, remembrance, and connection transformed perspectives on wildlife consciousness, creating lasting changes in how humans understand their relationship with the natural world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.